Good evening, everybody. I hope you hear me pretty good. Welcome to the Erudition Network. My name is Eddie Phillips. This is the Erudition Network. It's the Erudition Black History and Knowledge session. I am so appreciative of all of you, all the two that I see who are in here with us right now. We're a little bit early today. We're going to do a little bit, get back to our time of 5. It's just better for my schedule right now. And so I wanted to make sure that I put out there today that we would be on um, a little bit earlier. Um, this session is dedicated to teaching Black history and talking about our history and providing knowledge and understanding um, as we discuss things that haven't quite honestly been taught very well in our history. And so we try to do that on this program every Thursday. I wasn't with you all last Thursday. I had some things that were going on, and um, I when I did the shout out today and told people that they should be, on the lookout and join the session tonight. One of the things I keep trying to explain to people is that these sessions are free. They are free. You get answers to questions that you have that I know that you are not getting answered anywhere else. And so I cannot emphasize enough that when you come to these sessions um, or participate in the Erudition Network in its whole, you're going to get information that um, that is not generally out here. And so we encourage you to share the program and to join us for these live sessions to bring your questions and ask things that you know you want answers to. Additionally, people often, like tonight, I'm going to answer a few questions tonight that were sent in to me over the week. And so people often ask questions and send questions to the network, and we try to answer them in real time publicly. So um, I I'm looking forward to doing that tonight, and I want you all to, if you do anything right now, just share it. Go out there on your Facebook page or your social media and tell people, "Hey, join the Erudition Network Live Interactive right now. Get online, get some questions answered, learn some things tonight. It will benefit you." Um, I think that history our history of our culture needs to be prioritized. We do a horrible job. We didn't used to, but we now do a horrible job of making sure information is shared, is shared. Um, and so I want to make sure that we get people here. If they can't be at the live, at least get them to participate and watch the stream after the fact and ask questions on our YouTube page, on our Facebook page. Um, I don't think there's ever been one question that has been asked, to the network that I have not answered. And if I'm wrong, if you're in here or if you are watching the replay, please let me know, and I will tell you it probably was an oversight because I go out of my way throughout the week, despite whatever is going on in my busy schedule, to make sure that I answer these questions as they come up in real time, in real time. Alright, so I'm gonna get to some of these questions, but before I do that, I always open the floor and I ask you all, is there a question that you have tonight for the people who are in the audience tonight? Um, I don't know, Sean Anthony, I see you here. Good to see you. Tina, I see you. I have one of your questions. I don't know if you're talking about the same question, Tina. You you need to specify, but I don't know. Um, but one of the things that I always try to do when I open this show, yeah, I'm not wearing my headphones. Let me say something. One thing that has happened is over none of you all who've been watching have said, except for my mom, except for my mother. My wife always says something, so I won't count it. But was like, hey, you kind of started to look like a madman. Um, you know, um, um, when you're on the program. And so I had to ask my wife um, to go in and do something about it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let me show you how bad uh, it had gotten. Um, it had gotten kind of crazy. Look at his hair. So last week, I think, the week before last, because I wasn't on last week. Um, Look how crazy my hair had started to look. You see that? I looked completely. I would say mad sciencey, but I kinda believe just loony, and so I appreciate my mother and for making a point of saying, "Hey, that's not how you you look," and for my wife for taking the time to cut my hair and everything and make sure that I look presentable when I come on here and talk to you all and don't look like, Einstein's lost, like, brother, um, going crazy on the show, so, uh, that was greatly appreciated, and I thought that that should be addressed because yeah. Didn't realize, you're introverted, bibliophile, academic, you kinda get caught up in things and you don't pay as much attention as you should, certain things, and you just, you know, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Um, any questions? Any new questions before I get into some of the ones that were sent in? Do you all have any questions for me tonight? Any history questions from any era, any situation, any confusion that you may have, any issues that we could discuss on here live tonight and get audience participation and everybody to interact with anything, anything. I'm here for you right now to um get that done. And I want you to understand, I get questions from everywhere, from everywhere. I I sometimes am amazed at how many questions people actually send me. Um, and then I get on the show and there's no questions or there's nobody there. And then I'm like, wait a minute, where all these questions come from during the week? And then I don't see people. I should stop asking those questions. Maybe they'll show up for the actual live sessions or leave things in the groups. Maybe that's my issue. Maybe I'm just a little bit too um, giving of doing that. It's just what it is. I believe that we should be sharing information. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. So I'm not gonna stop doing that. All right, so I guess none of you all have any questions because I ain't seen none out of the 4 people that are in here right now that I can see. I'm going to assume that there are no questions tonight. So, um, I'm gonna talk about, a couple of things tonight. I'm trying to think which one do I handle first. Um, I don't know yet. I tell you what, let's handle the one that, one Michelle sent in, um, because I hear this a lot, and so I want to, I wanna talk about this. So I got a question in, um, a few and I have to apologize if you watch this later, and I didn't answer it. I came across it, um, kinda late. I had asked the question, probably been about a week or 2 ago, and my question was this is what I asked you all tonight, is there anything that you want to discuss? And one of the questions that I got, um, was about this idea of Black people, um, voting, um, or people voting or a vote having to constantly go up, uh, for us to stay free. And I have heard this many, 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 many times, um, from people over the years who have, uh, put this out and, said that this is something, that is real. But here's the thing. When we were freed, and I say African Americans, were freed, um, there was no more, actual federal vote for freedom. The Constitution is what the Constitution is. But what did happen a lot, unfortunately, is that there were new ways to get around the idea of, um, of slavery, of how we treat Black people. I was actually trying to find my Michelle Smith's actual question here. Okay, so she said there were a few of us talking, uh, and this came up to clarify. I forgot how it went. It was a law that every so many years the document had to be signed so blacks can remain free, not a slave. And so we'll talk about that question a little bit too. Um, there are different things that were put into place post slavery. There were slave codes. Um, the colonies had slave codes that regulated and controlled the lives of enslaved people. So what would happen before um, the Constitutional Amendment, before the Emancipation Proclamation is um, these codes cover several certain things, and that meant that it talked about how slaves could be married, how they could move around, um, all of these different things. It covered every aspect of their freedom, and so there were votes that were constantly done for free blacks, what they would be able to do and what they would not be able to do. And so I do believe that some confusion comes in where we start to not see that those slave codes are not necessarily a law. They were in a way that we see it right now. It does not cover what happened post um, the constitutional amendment. It only covers what happened before and how they used the code systems in order in the 1700s before the Civil War to control the movement, progress, and lives of enslaved people. Now, another thing that gets often confused is the Fugitive Slave Act. I say acts because people get it in their mind that there was only one. There was not only one. Congress passed a Fugitive Slave Act in 1793. Then they passed another one in 1850. The 1850 one was part of the 1850 Compromise, in which they were trying to expand slavery throughout the continent of the United States, through the expansion of the United States, right? But these laws were voted on because they, again, limited what free blacks could do, right? Those um, fugitive slave acts were about free those who were freed. Let's understand that after the Revolutionary War, many blacks had earned their freedom by participating in fighting for the freedom of this country, and they and their progeny would therefore be free, and they lived more in northern towns. But one of the things that happened was Fugitive Slave Acts were put in to limit the ability for those to be able to move around. And then owners, mostly in the South, would lie that they owned these people and they would pull them into slavery, even though their families had earned their freedom. So the idea of the Fugitive Slave Act and things like that are horrible idea of how we manipulate systems to keep people in bondage. Now, this was voted upon, and so I can understand how the idea then becomes that they vote to keep us free. But we have to understand that with the passing of uh, of of slavery, that was no longer really the case. Now, I say this, but let me now give you a caveat. The other things that we saw after the Civil War were the reintegration of black codes once federal troops left the South. Those codes again put restrictions on free blacks. They wanted to create a new form of slavery, so they passed vagrancy laws. They passed education laws. They passed employment laws. They did things to limit the ability of blacks being able to live. Now, again, this is not a federal law, but this is a state push or law to limit. We went from black codes in the 1800s, toward the end of the 1800s, and we went into the 1900s, right? And even to, honestly, um, as we got into the 2000s, we still see that there are Jim Crow laws on the books that still exists. What these things did was they pushed segregation, uh, uh, um, institutions of supremacy, and they targeted African Americans and kept them from doing certain things. Now, most of us know about Jim Crow, but the fact of the matter is these were state laws that were voted upon to keep people out of public spaces, out of transportation, out of education. I say people, African Americans. We had a prison system, uh, that we still see to this day, right? Where we see things that play out as with the convict leasing system that I've talked about in the past, where people who were in prison for vagrancy and small, laws, infraction, were put into jail and then by Constitution amendment were allowed to be used as slaves in the state. And then they were leased. Convict leasing meant they were loaned over to do jobs for the county, for the people. It was a mirroring of slavery. It was a mirroring of slavery. And so all of those things can be misconstrued. It can be taken as another form of of slavery and people having to vote on things, but the truth of the matter is these were just other addendums and things added to try to make it harder, and they still do for African Americans. But let's not think that um, we can have people vote slavery constitutionally back. We can always, as we did with prohibition, anything in the Constitution that has been proven can be amended and changed. But it would take an act of Congress. It would not take an act of the people allowing it to happen. You are not free um, based on a lease of law. You are free. That is your right. That is your constitutional right. This is the reason why people like the NAACP, the ACLU, people fight against racial laws that happen within the state because you are given those rights. That's your federal citizen right to live in this country. And so I don't want us to forget and to confuse that issue. I can see how it can be confused. And so I hope um, that answered the question that Mama Michelle asked. Um, but we don't want to get away from the rights that are guaranteed to you by the Constitution. The 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, those are yours. Those are there to protect you. So we want to make sure that that is, and I hope that I answered that question um, clearly um, for her. Uh, I got another question in. My wife asked a question, and it was funny because I guess this is heavily in the news over the last. I saw something today about there being um, um, earthquakes, earthquakes, uh, in this particular. Um, I'm just writing it down so I can project it, guys. Sorry, so I can change it. You can see what we're talking about. All right, so there was a question that was put out about Lake Lanier. It has been heavily in the news. Um, Lake Lanier is now being uh, turned into a water park, um, which I find to be ridiculous, considering that over the last 100 years, people have been very afraid of Lake Lanier in Georgia. Uh, there have been about estimated, uh, uh, I think they say about 9 to 10 million people visit Lanier every year, and they go there. A lot of them on ghost hunting because they want to be they want to be see they want to go there and see if they see the lady of the lake and all of these different things. I'm going to share a screen with you all while we discuss this. Okay. Um, give me a moment while I do that because I want us to talk about this. Good evening, Pastor Ray. It's good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. So I want to talk about Lake Lanier briefly. In order to do that, I want to bring up, if you guys will bear with me just a moment. Hopefully my screen will allow me to do this. I want to bring up my Sundown Town map. And if you have been around with me on these programs before, you know we've shown this map before. Um, this is a map that shows projected and validated sundown towns throughout American history. If you don't know what a sundown town is, a sundown town is a town basically where blacks were not permitted to be in after sundown. They were told that if you were here when the sun goes down, you would probably be killed, arrested, or hurt. And so this map shows a very good representation created by the historian Charles Lowen, who shows you how many sundown projected historical and factual sundown towns there were and are in the country. And so we're going to look at this as we talk about Lake Lanier. I'm going to go because Lake Lanier is up here. There we go. Okay, so we're going to go and talk about Lake Lanier. So the biggest issue with Lake Lanier, the history of it, it comes down to the fact, right, of the evils that were faced in the early 1900s in this country. Cruelty that we know that is often not spoken about. But there are things that were done that we need to discuss, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Particularly the Lake Lanier massacre. So there was a town here named Oscarville. And this town, unfortunately, it does not exist anymore. Of the, I don't know the actual number. I'm sure if we click, it'll give it to us. But over 1,000 or whatever Black citizens, Black people that lived in Oscarville post Civil War, that town was wiped out. That town was wiped out. And in the 1950s, they built the dam, the Beaufort Dam, and it created what is now known as Lake Lanier, which is a 50 to 60 square mile reservoir, man-made. And they put this over this town that they had destroyed. Graves, old homes, and everything were covered. And a town named Oscarville. A lot of the people in Oscarville were the emancipated, free Black folks that were freed after the Civil War. They were workers. They were good people. They were just trying to make themselves a Black town, which was indicative of Reconstruction era. And unfortunately, what ended up happening was racial violence. Evil took place. And so when we talk about Lake Lanier, we have to really start to understand what was going on in America during the 1920s. What was going on with people? People were motivated to kill based on the rise of the Klan, the Second Klan, based on the rise of American policies given by presidents like Woodrow Wilson. People were angry that Blacks were doing better. These workers who had been trained during slavery had trained their progeny to do and work the land. They were doing better than those whose families had never worked the land. And white supremacists were jealous. So what they did is they rose up and there was a massacre. Actually, if we were to be honest, there were more than one massacre that was done in that area. And then they rose up constantly to try to disenfranchise these people. And they were jealous because the people in Oscarville had a better life. A young white woman History says her name was Ellie or Ellen Grease, said that 2 black men tried to rape her. This happened in 1912. The sheriff apprehended both the 2 black men, and then they wound up apprehending up to 5 black men who supposedly raped this woman, even though she said only 2 had raped her. The pastors and the reverends of the time tried to tell the law, hey, let them go. This is going to cause a horrible situation. People are already spun up. We should just let this go. She's probably lying, right? Because of her past. Her minister and other ministers did not agree that this woman had been raped. But whites took this as an example to rise up, right? And they went out looking for vengeance. Then, when this wasn't being accepted, right, they said another woman, a Miss Crow, was raped and abused in Forsyth. We're going to look at Forsyth. If you look at, that's where we are right here, right? We're going to look at Forsyth. This happened about a week or 2 or within a month of the first. They arrested a 16-year-old black boy. And they tried to do a lynching. Let's just put it that way, to make him confess his innocence or his guilt. And they hung him. This spurred up the white mob, and the lynch mob went crazy. And over the following week, they started to apprehend black men. They started to apprehend black people. And they went crazy because they wanted vengeance. And before you know it, thousands of white citizens had come to the county. Thousands. And they started to do what we have seen done many times in American history's past. A massacre happened. White terrorists who didn't want to call themselves just the Klan, they called themselves the Black Night Riders or the Night Riders. Night Rider. Makes you think about the TV show, but it's not. And they said that they were going to run down, kill, or run every black person out of Forsyth, out of the county, out of the land. It is estimated that at least 1,000 people lost their lives due to these riots and pushing of these people out of here, but that another 1,000 or more people were pushed out and had to leave Oscarville and Forsyth County because they were threatened by death. This is an important thing for us to understand, ladies and gentlemen, because when we look, and I'm not ignoring you guys' comments, but when we look at this, I want you to understand that when we look at lynching, we sometimes tell ourselves that it happened at one time and that it ended. But lynchings were the beginning a lot of time of racial violence that went on for months, if not years. And it made and created this thing that we call sundown towns, or places where blacks were not welcome. The effects of that, as we look at this horrendous, as we look at this map, right? The effects of this are still felt. That's why it's a flag here. This is why this is a town of special interest in sundown towns. Because when you look at Forsyth County, let's look at this. You will notice that from 1860 right? There were 898 blacks in the census. By 1880, there was 1,487. That's the largest amount that was ever reported there. But you will notice as we get into 1912, as we get into the lynchings and the murders and the killings, I want you to see the drop. I want you to see that drop. Look at that drop. From 1,098 people in 1910 to a decade later of only being 30. Living at the far out of the county. And people at Forsyth County, even within the 1980s, telling folks that black folks ain't welcome in Forsyth. When Oprah Winfrey asked the question to somebody from Forsyth County in 1987, the man said, they have the right to live here. I hate to laugh, but this is 1987. Said blacks have the right to live wherever they want, but we have the right to choose if we want a white community also. And you see the steady drop. In the 2000s, we started to see more people coming back because a lot of people don't know the history. Now they're building a water park. They're building a water park on Lake Lanier where they went and buried this town. They're building a water park and celebrating that lake, this man-made lake, a reservoir. And under the bottom of it, there's still black bodies and mass graves. So when my wife asked this question and said, would you talk about this? I said, yeah, I don't mind talking about Lake Lanier. It's an issue. It's a history that we don't talk about. It's a history that still goes on today. Because when you think about the fact of having, let's look in 2000, there was 93,000 whites living in Forsyth County. And of the blacks, there were only 684. We have to do better at teaching our history. It is the reason why we do this program. And it's the reason why I think it's just so important that we start to try to piece these things together. Lost, tolerating the sundown title is the permission, which led to America creating Black Lives Matter acts, movements, etc. Well, we've always had things that we've built. We've built the Black Panther Party. We've Black Lives Matter, the NAACP, the SCLC, SNCC, all of these different groups, all of these things that we do that are built to try to protect us from what is going on in America. But I want you to understand that there is a reason why we see so much red still on this map. And those a lot of it is in the South. If you really look at the sundown map, you start to understand that it's really not in the South so much. Someone told me, I was like, I was amazed at how much I saw in Illinois and Indiana, but you should not be amazed. In the 1920s, the hub of the KKK, the Second Klan, was Indiana. That was the hub. Blacks weren't allowed to be in a lot of these suburban areas. There's a lot of sundown towns in the Midwest. There are a lot of them in Arkansas. You see less in Mississippi. And if you read some of the things in Mississippi, say, well, we had laws. We didn't need to push them out. We just need to let them understand what they could and could not do. And that goes to the question, goes and leans back to the question I asked that Mama Michelle put out. Right? These black codes and black things that were put into place to limit what you could do. Slavery by another name. You're a sharecropper, and everything you get to keep up that land, you get from the master, the owner. He sells you your goods. He gives you your money. So when you have those types of laws in place, you don't really have to worry so much. But when we had freedoms in the North, right? Blacks could go places. Well, you got to limit where they go. Yeah, they can come here to work, but when that sun go down, they better be the heck out of here. And you look at these places close to Chicago. Let's zoom in. Romeoville was a huge one. Cicero is put down in Black history as a place when the civil rights movement was going on to show you just how intolerant that they were. You couldn't go in Cicero. When Dr. King came and did his march in Chicago, and he went in Cicero to counter protest that physically assaulted Dr. King, he said it was worse than in the South. You could go into Cicero and you may not come back. Don't cross that line. But we don't see that. Our kids don't know that now. You know, we tell these things, right? But we're not honest in the history that we teach. You just look at the totals. And then you start to look at the totals as they relate to today, within the last decade or now, where these lynchings, and people don't realize why Black folks fled out. Well, Black people don't remember the history of why they fled from there. They just realize we're not welcome there. And this goes on and on and on and on. Dick Gregory once said, and I thought it was a very educated thing that he said. He said that white supremacy got a long memory. They often build monuments, even in secret, to remind themselves of what it is that they were able to do. When you look and people say that they're building a water park over Black bodies at a place where Black folks was told you should not be in and you cannot be in. This is why today I was sitting there and they were saying that in the area of Lake Lanier, over the last couple of days, they've had earthquakes. And it went into the idea, oh, this is haunted. I like to believe that the God that I serve, that I believe in, will not be mocked. And that blood does cry out. And you do evil things, right? That you think you do in secret. The mass graves that are all over these places, these towns did not become sundown towns without expelling people. There's something has to answer for that. And we're starting to see things answer for that. I pray that people understand and that they learn their history. I saw a woman, um, a white woman once on a program. She said, I went down and I prayed. She was related to one of the men, I think it was her father, who had killed the 3 civil rights workers. And she said, I went down to that earthen dam and I prayed for forgiveness. I prayed for forgiveness for me, for my progeny, for my kids. I prayed to God that he forgive my family for the evils done by others in my family and that we would do better. She didn't want that ancestral sin. There is so much that is out here that is going on in our country. So much of a revival of hatred and racism, and you're just seeing it everywhere. And we try to get on here um, to do this program so that I can talk to you about some of this history. Tina, I appreciate your question. I hope I answered um, your question. I hope I answered Mom Michelle's question. I wanted to make sure that I got on here tonight because I wasn't on last week to do that. And please make sure if you are on, I will make sure I will send it to her that I answered her question in real time here on the program tonight. But I just want us to start to really do what you all did. Ask questions. I wrote my notes down a little bit so I stayed truthful because I can go out of my memory, but I like to try to stay factual. That's what it is. You have the right to go up and look up everything on Lake Lanier. What I will tell you about that history that is not often talked about is how the federal government played into the hiding of it. And unfortunately, we see that through a lot of our history. We see uh, places which have been basically ignored when in our schools, in our books, um, even in our legislation. People have things still on their state laws that they know are wrong. But until you catch it, until you find it, it will just stay there. There's history that is just purely hidden, buried under dams, buried in fields, whole massacres. We will make Custer's Last Stand a national historic site where people could go and look at where a man tried to go in and massacre indigenous men, women, and children and was destroyed, killed, wiped out. His whole army wiped out. And we will remember it as some historic thing that Custer did. But we won't talk about the multitudes of lynchings and massacres and murders and people who were killed in a lot of racial uprisings throughout the 1900s. It's horrendous. It's horrendous. And we look at it and we see it. And we don't even know really what's in front of us. what's here. All right, I got about another 10 minutes. We answered those 2 questions before I get ready to get out of here. Does anybody have a question? Anybody have a question? Anything? I'm not wearing my headphones today, so I hope that you all are hearing me, because I turn my volume all the way down too, because I just want to make sure that I'm not echoing, but I didn't want to have my headphones on today. But any questions of any of you all that I have here today? If you watch, Alexa wanted to ask me a question too. If you watch the program later, hey, feel free, drop us a question. I promise you, we will do our best to answer it, and to go in on it. If you don't have anything, let me say this. I took a little bit of a break. I'm getting back to working on medieval African history, Middle Ages, and we're getting ready to go back to uh, doing that. I have research on it. I have questions I'm reviewing, and I initially came up with, and things like that. But what I'm getting ready to put that book out. If you have not, excuse me, or work on that book so we can get put out. If you have not purchased the first book, go do that. Go get that digital book. Yes, we are trying to get a print copy of that book out. It will be large. I'm telling you, it will be large. It is a lot of questions. I want you to consider that if there's 101 questions that I'm asking, then there's 101 answers. And a lot of times it's not on one page. So you're looking at least that's already over 200 pages. And so we want to make sure that you are able to get these books in any medium that you can. But I also want to make it cost effective for you, so that you can learn, So if you haven't gotten the digital copy of that book, please go to Lulu Books, and LULU, and purchase, download a digital copy. You can also go on Amazon, and you can pull up that book, 101, the Erudition Network, 101. I tell you what, let's just drop the link in here, because I want you to get this book, and I want you to benefit from it. The first book is Early African History. There is so much out here, mistruth about early African history. And I wanted to make sure that I wrote something and I asked questions. I don't know why it's okay. There we go. Computer was being a little weird. But I want you to go out, get this book. My sons, I see them every now and again when they come in here. They'll ask questions based on this book. And I'm appreciative of it. I think that that's a good thing. That means that they're learning something. I put the Amazon link in here. I'll put the Lulu link in here too. But to me, it's just important that you go out and you learn something about your history, right? If nothing else, it's not about the fact that I wrote a book, right? It's really not about that. What it's about is I want you to benefit. I want you to learn. I want you to not be caught up in someone's foolery. Because let me tell you something, there's foolery out here. And it's easy to get caught up in it. It's easy to get caught up in the lies of it. And I'm seeing it grow. All right, there's the Lulu link. We're seeing it grow every day. As I'm going through medieval Africa, and I'm looking at the importance, We were never told, right, that there was a major trade, right, between the areas of Sumatra going into the Indian Ocean, and how important that was for Ethiopia, how important that was for Madagascar, how important that was for Persia, Baghdad, all of that interlocking area, because of the monsoons, the winter summer monsoons, and because of the stability of the oceans down in the Indian Ocean, people were able to communicate across the East. We're not taught that. But I tried to cover it a little bit in the first book to talk to you about how it started. But in medieval times, as we start to look from the eras of 1200 to 1400, you'll see just how important that is. How they use the weather, how they use these areas of travel to communicate, how they progressed out of Africa throughout the entire world, how they influenced. So I'll tell you, getting the first book is going to set you up to show you kind of what societies were there. As we get into medieval Africa, as we get into medieval times, and we start to see how Africans, Muslims interacted with each other, not fighting each other, even though we were getting into the Crusades. Such an important thing for you all to learn. And I'm working on that right now. So I hope you go out and get this, get the current book so that you're ready for the new book and everything will be good. I hope you got something from this session tonight. It's always my hope that you get something from it. I knew I would be answering those 2 questions that were sent in by our viewers, and I appreciate those questions again. And maybe we will be back here at this 5 o'clock hour, because I kind of like this hour, because what it'll do is it will allow me, I have things that go on in my own, even though I try to be very good about getting on here every Thursday. It becomes very difficult. And then I have to weigh the cost, right? Am I doing this at a detriment to myself? And then are we getting the participation? If we're not getting the participation, then we have to start to rethink what we're doing and how we do it, so that we can better our participatory people's interaction with the interactive. I call it that. That's always been my name for it. And I appreciate all of you who have come on and ever interacted with us on this studious program. I think that's it. I don't think I have anything else, unless you all have anything you want to say to me, any shout outs, any condemnations, any disagreements, arguments. I'm always open to arguments. You can always tell me, Eddie, you're wrong, and we can debate that and we can talk about that. That's how we learn. But I want you to be able to learn, right? And I want you to be able to grow. I'm excited about this new book. I don't see too many books out here that talk about medieval Africa and its importance on the world and its influences to European life. We spent a lot of time talking about medieval Europe and people in armor and all of this, but we very rarely talk about how the language and culture and the shifts of things change the world. So I am so excited about this upcoming book, and I want you to get it. I want you to get it. I'm going to try to do something a little different this time, whereas we put out the digital and the print at the same time. so people can understand the differences. Um, and we'll go through that. We'll go through that. Um, such a important period of time to talk about with the Kingdom of Castile, the Aragons, the Portugal, and slavery as it started to rev its ugly head. Just something that we definitely need to get into. And so, um, bring your questions. Hey, even before the book is out, if you got a question about those times, drop it in the chats. I guarantee you I will answer you. To the best of my ability, I will answer you and I will give you somewhere to go to grow your knowledge. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me get out of here. I've talked enough. I've said enough. You all be blessed. And until next week, God willing, I hope to see you again soon. All right, be blessed. Thank you for your time.